Greetings and salutations, everybody. This is me, Robert Phoenix, your man in the shadows. That's right. At least the 11th house, Robert Phoenix, sign behind me is nicely illuminated and stands out in the darkness. I kind of like this look. It's a little film noirish in some ways. Yes, indeed. How the heck is everyone out there in virtual land with all of the vast fiber optic tentacles connecting all of us in an etheric web of oneness, togetherness, and now here we are. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying whatever your experience is, at what level your whatever level your experience is at. It doesn't always have to be fun, happiness, and bliss. Sometimes it can be sweet melancholy. Sometimes it can be a smoldering sense of anger and righteous injustice. Sometimes it can be nothing at all. And even in that state, I hope you're enjoying it. Anyway, we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to go over, of course, the Astro Weather, the conditions in the inner and outer sky. And we got our star of the day. And, there's a lot going on out there. Just to give you a heads up, over on 15 Minutes of Flame, over on Rumble, I'm going to be addressing Helter Skelter. And this is going to be a show that will have some astrological elements involved. So if you are interested in my work around topical news, history, the hidden highways and byways of both, combined with astrology, come check it out. The link is in the description of the show. I think you'll enjoy it. Well, hopefully you'll enjoy it. What I have to say may not be all that warm and fuzzy, but it is what it is. Sometimes we have to comment on what's in the air, regardless of what it might look like. See, this is the whole thing. This is what I've been talking about with astrology. You have to, we all have our biases. It's just who we are. We live in a subjective universe. Everything comes through our own personal filters. However, the best astrology is one that is as agnostic as possible. It has the widest vector, so it can connect as many dots as possible. And when you have that, then you have a pretty good system to begin to decode and even begin to live by. So let me give you a little bit of an update here on some things. We're still working on the meetup. I'm having a session with my client who wants to do the meetup. That'll be today. But I'll get some more info on dates and times. And it may have to do it a bit later because she has some, I believe, cataract surgery or something that might be around that time of May. So we may have to push it off a little bit. We might have to push it into Gemini season, which is fine. I like Gemini. It's local. It's communicative. It's chatty, right? So that might be a better time. But I am thinking about taking the 11th house on the road here for a couple of weeks. And I've been wanting to hit the road for a while and, sort of show up in different places and, take the meetup to the road. and also do some live shows while I'm out there, probably for about 10 days, maybe 10 days max. And I'm thinking about doing that maybe sooner rather than later. So if you are interested in that, leave a comment in the chat or in the comment section. And also over on Rumble, I'm going to put a post on Rumble. And I have a kind of a route that I would probably be taking, going through like the southern part of the country, starting with the Louisiana, and then going through like, I don't know, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, North Carolina, and down to Florida. And then kind of ending in Florida, maybe doing something at Dr. Longo's bookstore. So I'm thinking about doing that route. So if you're along that area and you're interested in like their personal reading, like a session with me, or getting together with a group of your friends, or just hanging out, put some comments in the comments for the show, and I'll put up something on Locals with some rough dates maybe, and timelines, and some areas I'll be stopping in. So I'm just throwing that out there because I feel like I need to literally get out into space and see what's happening, not just virtually in this country, but physically in this country. Because I feel like there's an incredible amount of tension and chaos. I was on Twitter yesterday, and Twitter is kind of like gasoline alley anyway. But yesterday I was seeing things on Twitter that I haven't seen. I mean, a lot of it is algorithmic, and they're going to feed you stuff, right? But this is, wow, the level of naked animus, potentially violence, and even aggression is something I have not experienced to that degree on Twitter. And there's a reason for that. Number one, it's because when Jack Dorsey and crew were running Twitter, they would shut down any conversation that leaned into uncomfortable subjects. And for whatever reason, for the most part, Musk has not done that. He actually allows some of these conversations to happen. And maybe it's because they want to gaslight people. Maybe it's because they're using the algorithm to get people fired up. I'll give you an example. There was a video that was captured in Canada, and this was from about 3 years ago, okay? And it was this guy who was in this kind of, I don't know what you would call it, sort of country subdivision. Not white trashy, but, kind of nice lake homes and stuff like that. But, in an area where there's space between people's houses. And there's this guy who's rolling around, and this one guy comes up to him who lives there and asks him what he's doing there. And they get into this verbal confrontation. The guy tells him to leave, to get the fuck out. And the guy's, talking to him through the window of his car, not down, but through the window, right? And then the older guy he's got like a pool cue, and he smashes the guy's window. And I'm like, wow, this is really intense, right? This thing happened 3 years ago. Now, there was a disclaimer on Twitter in some kind of community note, but if you didn't know it happened 3 years ago, based on the immediacy of it showing up on the feed, you would think it would have happened yesterday, but it didn't. And this is what I'm talking about. There's this gaslighting that's going on right now. And it's very aggressive. And if we look at this from an astrological perspective, which I'm going to cover over on 15 Minutes of Flame, this is definitely Neptune and Aries territory. When you think of Neptune, well, first of all, Neptune is the sign that rules gas. First of all, it's a liquid and it's also a gas, right? The liquid and the gassy part are very Neptunian. In many cases, gas, oil is extracted from the ocean, from beneath the ocean. There are oil derricks off the coast of California, off the coast of Venezuela, off the coast of the north of Scotland, where they extract oil from beneath the ocean, which is very Neptunian. So we know Neptune rules liquids and things like gas. You drop a little Aries in there, and that is gas lighting. Aries is fire. So there's a lot of gaslighting going on right now. And the gaslighting through social media is getting people really ginned up, getting people very aggressive. And when you deal with something like Neptune, you're also dealing with an outer planet which has a collective feel to it. And we're just getting started with Neptune and Aries. So yesterday on Twitter was just absolutely and utterly aggressive and manipulative. Let me add that. Manipulative. Who put that post up from 3 years ago on Twitter? And why? Why now? That's the question. And if I told you what the content, if I told you who the people in the video were, what they looked like, the guy bashed in the window was "Get off my lawn, white guy." And what does that serve? What kind of narrative or stereotype does that serve? How many "Get off my lawn, white guys" watch that video and say, "Good for him. I wish I could do that"? Let me tell you how suggestive and how powerful the media can be. And I'm not talking about talking head, right? That is a version of the media. That is a version of social media. I'll tell you how powerful it is. When I was a kid, I saw the movie Death Wish on TV. I was young. I might have been 14. You know what I did after that movie? I saw the movie. I went home. I think it was at a friend's house. I watched it at his house. I went home. I got my pellet gun, and I started patrolling the fucking streets of my suburban neighborhood. Like, that's how powerful the images, the narrative, and the mythologizing of media can be. I was a 14-year-old kid. Here I am. There's nobody in my suburban neighborhood that's going to be doing anything. But I just seen Death Wish. And this is how this works. This is how people get programmed. And we're in a time now, like when Neptune just moves into a sign, like things get lit. They get lit. So the last time we had a major sign change in Neptune was 2011, when Neptune went into Pisces. If you go back and look at that time, that's when Fukushima happened. And it was literally a sea change. Right? There's something about Fukushima that to this day we still don't completely understand. Like the severe violence of what happened at a very deep level. I'm not sure we understand it. I'm not sure we comprehend. Yoichi Shamitsu, who's over on Jeff France, has talked about how that event, which many believe was triggered by a massive bomb sitting on the coastal shelf of the Daiichi province in Japan, that it actually affected something very deep within the Earth's structure itself. This is what Shamit has been exploring. And if that is true, then it's not only affected something at a deep physical level of the planet, but there's also something, we're all connected. Everything's connected. We're all connected. So when something like that happens at a deep seismic level, it's also impacting something else, like our inner gyroscope. And that since 2011, we're a little off. And I think if I framed it in that way, you might agree with me that everything else has been just slightly off ever since then. This is the nature of Neptune. And sometimes it's not very discernible. The last time it was Neptune was in Aries, and that was 15 years before that. I'm sorry, Neptune was in my apologies, Aquarius. It was in Aquarius. And of course, there were some very strange events going on with Neptune and Aquarius. And it was really the beginning of the manipulation of the media. Like social media really begins to take off with Neptune in Aquarius, doesn't it? It really begins to take off. You have MySpace, and then you have the birth of Facebook. And it is the subtle manipulation of what we now call social media spaces. We can get into more of that later, but I just wanted to give you kind of a heads up and a look at what we'll be talking about today at greater depth and detail. All right, let's see who's here. Neptune is the higher. So the three planets that are connected to Neptune are Venus and Jupiter. So the answer to your question, Steve, Neptune is the higher octave of Jupiter. Jupiter is the higher octave of Venus. All right, let's take it from the top. Let's do a quick little roll call. Healing Heart, Rosie. By the way, shout out to Sigurd wherever you are. Hope you're doing okay. I'm sure that it is politically dangerous to hang out on a show like this. So, but wherever you are, Sigurd, we hope you're doing well. Healing Heart Rosie, right there at the beginning. Check that out. California Contrarian, the new next. He's with us from Oklahoma. Where the wind comes whipping down the plain. Scott Jersey, what's up, Scott? Julianne Ross, misbehaving too. Hammer time. I think the vibes are like something's coming. Yes, let me just throw that up there. You got it right. There is something coming. Hi, all. It still feels like Mercury is retrograde. I gotta comment on this, Devin. It's true. It's absolutely true. So I decided that I wanted to get a new TV. Something a little bigger so I can enjoy images slightly bigger. And I went through and I started looking at all these so-called entry-level larger TVs. And I got one, and then I kept reading about it and other TVs, and I'm like, no, I don't want this TV. It's like, it's probably not the best one that I can get, even for the money, which isn't a lot, by the way. So I put a cancel order on it, which is very Mercury retrograde. So I had to bring that up. Thanks for sharing that, Devin. Janine's here. Jackie Delario. Christina Jerzik, she's right in there. Yeah, it does feel like Mercury retrograde. I think it might be Venus. This is what Pam Janine has to say. The energy is thick, heavy, unpredictable, unpleasant, unapologetic. Like it's saying, I'm here, not going anywhere. This gets back to this whole thing with David and what happened with David and the Starseed Astro. I put this post up on Twitter. It's gotten an incredible amount of views. Let me see how many views it's gotten. Let's see. I put it up a couple days ago, and it's gotten 6,217 views and over 100 likes. Of course, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, there was an astrologer who accused David of plagiarizing his content. Now, if there's one thing I know about David, and I know a few things about David, he's not a plagiarist. And I'll tell you why. He doesn't have any fucking time to watch other people's stuff, right? No time. And what this person was doing was he's kind of gaslighting him. And there's a cure. Let me just bring this comment up here. I'll show you. This kind of blew my mind, actually. And this is one of the comments from the from it. Let's see. Give me a second. This is from Justin, 73396267. This is a reply. He says, I've been following you both for a while and just had to comment. This guy, in my opinion, has been a secret jealous hater and has had it out for you for months. This is David, not me. A few weeks ago, I don't know if you saw, but he threw a tantrum because you were included in at Astro Phoenix 9 top 10 astrologer list. His followers needed to reassure him that he was the best astrologer ever. Furthermore, a couple of months back, I saw him get offended at a follower suggesting that he should collab with you being David, not me. I usually don't get involved in a mess, but I thought that was odd. It really is odd. You know, when we get into Aries, there's a lot of egoification with Aries. But when you go through the fire signs, and this is not meant to be a slight to any Aries out there, but Aries has a different kind of self-awareness. Leo is painfully self-aware. Like, they're very self-aware. That's the nature of Leo. There is a self-awareness with Sagittarius that sometimes borders on bitter and cynicism. Because Sagittarius understands that whatever kind of exalted vision of the universe, you know, in this temporal world almost always falls short. But the self-awareness with Aries is not always immediate. In fact, there can be a degree of self-unawareness, which is in some ways what makes Aries so interesting. Because the nature of Aries is to act. It is not to reflect. It is to be an individual engaged in moving things forward, pushing against the tide, dealing with conflict and obstruction. It's the nature of Aries. But it is not reflective. Like Libra is reflective, the opposite sign. You know, Libra is like, well, what would happen if I did this? Or what would happen if I did this? Or what would happen if I did this? Or what would happen if, you know, trying to balance out the scales of, you know, one's impact or actions on the world. Very different, right? So there's not a ton of what I would call actualized self-awareness through Aries. Now, it can come, but it always comes after the act. And whatever kind of self-awareness evolves out of it happens very quickly, and in many cases is very unapologetic, right? So when we have this Neptune and Aries action going on, there's a lot of people who are going to be acting out of a lack of self-awareness. And with Neptune, they're driven by these deep emotional needs, whatever they are. You know, I don't have as much clout as I'd like, or, you know, oh, that person, their girlfriend or wife, like, you know, they're a 9 and I'm with a 5 or a 6. And so there's this very we're going to see it. You're going to see people that are going to do things, and they're not going to be thinking about what they're doing. They're going to be acting on impulse. And it's usually with Neptune out of a sense of what's missing, what's not there, what they're not getting, which is ultimately some degree of emotional gratification. And somebody said, oh, this guy should retract it. I completely agree. You know, when we live in the internet world, which is like, it's really cool, and like, we're having a good time right now, and I'm connecting with you, you're connecting with me, and we're kind of, you know, we're all from different places, you know, real time. I mean, this is a phenomenon. When you think about it, we kind of take it for granted. We get up, we have our coffee. Oh, there's Robert. Oh, and here's my friends in the chat. Look, we didn't have this 10 years ago. We didn't have it like this. I mean, 10 years ago, I was doing Blog Talk Radio, and there was a chat in there, but it wasn't like this, right? So, I mean, there's some cool things here with it. Okay, well, not to, you know, to besmirch the medium. However, it also brings with it a sense of theoretical anonymity, and so you don't have to meet a person in person to really, you know, talk with them or call them out. You know, we did a video on this recently. Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard did a video. A very dramatic guy. He's an actor, of course. And he was calling people out. Like, if you're going to question my theorems, my papers, do me a favor. Bring it face to face. That's what real men used to do. That's a very Aries sentiment, isn't it? So we're going to see a lot of this. We're just getting started here. We're just getting cooking. We got 15 years. 15 years. Wrap your head around that of Neptune and Aries, and people getting gassed up, right? And I do think the guy needs to retract it. But what happens with Aries? It's not apologetic. It is not a sign given to apologia. So unless something is really, really dire in somebody's income stream, depends on it, I'm not sure we'll get a lot of apologies during this time. However, the people that do apologize, the people that do have a moment where they become self-aware that their actions have had a deep impact on others, it's a powerful, powerful moment for self-redemption. And to admit that we weren't right. And to admit that perhaps if we'd gotten out of our own way, we might have been able to learn something different, or maybe even more gracefully. All right, let's get into the weather. Let's do it. I have a story I want to share about that whole concept, but I'll do it in a bit here. You know, usually what happens is when I do this, it is not visible, so I have to retract it. You know what? That's more for the course. Let's do it one more time. And by the way, thank you all for being here. I know that there's plenty of things you can be doing with your morning, and I'm thrilled that you can share it with me. There we go. All right. Let me zoom in here. Okay. Venus. Creeping. Still a little retrograde. It's going to station on Saturn. Let's talk about the Venus-Saturn station. There are going to be moments in relationship here. Very poignant, powerful moments in relationship where there is a taking stock of where you are in your life with any kind of relationship. It could be a relationship with your significant other. It could be a relationship with your business partner. It could be a relationship with your kid. Whatever that relationship, we're going to constellate the concept of relationship. And it is a kind of coming to Jesus moment. Hey, Pisces, how about that? It's a coming to Jesus moment where you're looking at the relationship, and generally it's usually the other person as well, because it takes two to tango. And you're asking yourselves the question, what are we doing? What are we doing? Why are we here? What is our purpose? And in Pisces, it is a much deeper exploration of the question and the concept. And as Venus stations, hangs out there, the what comes out of that conjunction and station will be life-changing for many people. There is a very sobering quality to Venus-Saturn conjunction. And whatever has been disregarded, kind of put in the denial bucket, like that rises to the surface. There's a sobriety here. And it's not bad. It's not bad. It's actually quite practical in a lot of ways. It removes the gloss and the glamour and the sheen. And it asks the question, when we remove all of these things, what's there? If you remove this idea that, we're all going to be attractive and young and vital and vibrant and, in our own minds, beautiful forever, remove that, then what's there? Who's the person sitting across from you? What will they be like in 10 years? What will you be like in 10 years? Will you be able to sit in the same room 10 years from now and have the same kind of interaction? Maybe it's deeper, or maybe it's a continuum of whatever it is going on right now. This is kind of where we're at. I remember, we all have these moments where we start to become self-aware. We look around, we watch other people. And I think I might have been in my late teens. And I started to watch older people in public spaces together. And they didn't say a whole lot. And I was trying to wrap my head around this because, I'm a talkative person, obviously. My family talkative. There was no shortage of communication, in our household. Whatever level of communication that was. But so watching people sit in a place together in silence was very unusual for me. And especially with the older people. And so I would ask myself this question, are they in a place where they're really comfortable with being silent with one another? Or if they just run out of things to say? It's an existential question that I don't really have an answer for. I think there's probably a little bit of both in there. But I would tend to lean into that they kind of run out of things to say. Who are you when you're those people? What is that going to look like? This is what Venus-Saturn does. There is this kind of reckoning here. It's at a very, very deep level. Very deep level. I'm not a big karma person. But if we were to use this Venus-Saturn conjunction, it would be one of those conjunctions where you have to ask yourself and the other person, whoever they are again, could be anybody. It could be your life partner, your husband, your wife, your business, whoever. Have we fulfilled our purpose? Have we fulfilled our purpose? Now, the answer might be no. In which case, you saddle up. And Venus moves forward, and here we go. The answer might be yes. You look at everything, yeah, I think, we've done everything we can. What else can we do? It doesn't mean you have to leave that person. But whatever it is you're doing from that point forward is going to be different than what brought the two of you together. The third option would be, yeah, we have done everything we can. Then what do we do together? Maybe this is a time for us to recognize all that we have done and where we've come from and how far we've come. And maybe it's time for us to saddle up and ride off in opposite directions. Hey, we'll always be friends and we'll unconditionally love and support one another. No acrimony here. There's no acrimony. Not with Mars in the trine. So this is a very interesting time. Very, very interesting time. I'll go one level deeper. It's not just relationship. It's our relationship with what we call spirit or God. And I think this is part of this Venus-Saturn conjunction. Where are you on that journey? You feel complete. If you were to exit your body today, tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, 6 months from now, how would you feel? I would say most of you would say, I'm not done. I'm not done. Maybe some of you are done. Maybe if everything got unplugged tomorrow, you'd be good to go. There ain't nothing wrong with that. If you're reconciled and you're at peace with it, so be it, blessed be. God be with you. Right? But I think for the majority of us, we're like, yeah, not quite done yet. So you have that dialogue, that relationship with, really, we're talking about, God, really, I mean, come on, we're talking Saturn, we're into, whatever vision of the deity you have, then you would ask yourself, well, what more do I need to do? I was going to say accomplish, but it's not quite about accomplishing. What more do I need to do in order for my spirit to feel at peace? And that whatever I did to do, whatever I came here to do, I'm good. I could walk out that temporal door right now and feel okay. And I guess maybe perhaps wherever we are, that's what we should strive for, no matter what we've accomplished. But I would say that if there is something that you do feel incomplete with, that you haven't done, that you would like to, we're going to bring Capricorn into this, and Saturn, achieve, you should think about it. And stop wasting time. Stop wasting time. It's going to be a very interesting weekend. Very, very interesting. I think it can be very productive on a deep level. Deep level. So if you have to have those conversations, don't be afraid to go there, whether with another person or inside of yourself. It's what's up. It's what's on the menu. Part of the season. The one thing that you want to watch out for is the critical nature of this Virgo moon. Look at that. And it's conjunct the South Node. And we're almost in eclipse territory, aren't we? Feeling very eclipsy in some ways. This is a bit of a precursor of the September 21st energy, which is a partial solar eclipse happening on the autumnal equinox. So the Virgo moon is going to be critical. So if you have this dialogue, if you're exploring this territory, it can be a little rough. If you're being really honest with yourself, you go, shit. There's a lot of things that I haven't done. There's a lot still on the table. And you can get really down on yourself for not having done it. I would say it's okay to have a critical point of view, but It's not, you don't want to stay there because it can be crippling. And then you're looking for reassurance from other people. And with the Virgo moon, it's not going to come. Not going to happen. Nobody wants to get messy with the Virgo moon. It's just the nature of it. Now, when the moon moves into Libra, tomorrow and then on Saturday, we're in full moon territory. It's a different. I like the energy. It's more balanced. Somebody's on one side of the conversation. There's somebody else on the other side of the conversation, right? So if you're going to have these conversations, which you probably will, Friday, Saturday, even Sunday, probably Friday, Saturday is your best bet. Sunday, we move into that moon in Scorpio, and it gets very intense. Those conversations can be dire. We still have Mercury, Mars here in the trine. Mercury's direct now, of course. So if you have a thought that's combined with the feeling, you move that into that Mars energy, you flow into it, and you express easily. Self-expression and work should be easy at this point. The sun is coming in and squaring Mars. Now we're having the Sun-Mars square dialogue. And there's two paths here. There's one path, which is sort of the going with the flow, right? Water finding its own level, the path of the spirit, and then there's the path of conflict. Sometimes you got to deal with the path of conflict. The two aren't mutually exclusive. You may have to deal with the path of conflict in order to open this up. Or you may just be here and the path of conflict resolves itself. It's a story I like to tell. This happened to me a long time ago. And some of you who've been long-time listeners have heard this. When I was, I think around 20, I had kind of a punk rock haircut. And I was hanging out with my girlfriend, my girlfriend's brother's girlfriend, who had become his wife. He was not there. He was doing something else. His best friend, who we went to high school with, and both played in the same high school football team. And the woman who was renting a room to my girlfriend's brother's girlfriend. Got that? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 of us. 3 females, 2 males. So it's me and the other guy. And he was, he was like this blue collar dude from Pacifica, California. Grew up in the 70s, played football. I even remember the guy's name. Anyway, we're sitting around and, we're doing like late 70s things. So they're probably like 19 years. And we're all not feeling loved. And he starts capping on me about my hair. And he's being aggressive. And he's really trying to get under my skin. And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Whatever you feel about my hair is fine. Whatever you feel about it's not going to, and I'm not going to take it personally. And he kept going at me, and I kept kind of doing the Gandhi thing on him, right? And a lot of it was just natural, and some of it was psychological. But I wasn't having the inner dialogue. Says, oh, don't let this guy get to you. That might have been about 10% of my inner dialogue. It was just pretty natural. Anyway, at a certain point, he says to me, are you for real? I said, yeah. And at that moment, I won the guy over. And we became, it's not that I had any antipathy towards him. I liked him. He was cool. Like, he was clearly coming from a different space than me, right? But we became, like, in that moment, like, we didn't hang out after that. We became buddies. We went out to a club. We went and saw this band from, I think, Athens, Georgia, called Pylon. And they were great. We went dancing, and suburban working class white guy from Pacifica is like cutting it up, at this club with this weird band from Athens, Georgia called Pylon. This kind of dance rock thing. He was into it. This is the reason I'm telling this story, is because this is indicative, right? This is indicative of the Sun-Mars square. Getting your go, getting your go, getting your go, pushing, right? Conflict. And if you just let go, what happens? The flow opens up. And that's what happened. All of a sudden, we weren't. There was never any animus on my end. But this is kind of what I'm talking about here. Now, you may have to go through the conflict and not turn the other cheek, or not invoke the spirit of passive resistance. That is what it is. And this energy is going to grow over the weekend. Tomorrow, it's really peaked. Tomorrow, it really peaks next week. But tomorrow is well, today is interesting. Today's Thursday, right? It's the hammer of the gods. So I would expect the energy to really kick off today in that very aggressive sort of way. Okay, let's talk about the star of the day. If we do that, what do? We got to put up the old banneroo here. All righty. So I have a prop today. Brought me a prop. Oh, you know what I did? I did the wrong thing. Hold on. Let me get this up here. There we go. All right. My prop out of my pocket. There it is. Number G53, Lumina, clarity, renew and repair. True Hemp Science. Beautiful stuff. Anyway, this is what the product looks like. And if you go to truehempscience.com, you will find a whole host of CBD products, not just any CBD products, some of the best, organically sourced and then expertly crafted by my friend Chris over at truehempscience.com. If you buy $100 or more, type in 15MINS and you will get you'll get a goodie bag, which will include more than likely some gummies, maybe some mini droppers of some goodies. It'll be great. I guarantee you the gummies are, I say this every time, but it's true, they're worth the price of admission alone. $150 worth of free shipping. There's always a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can make an appointment with somebody there to ask them about your CBD needs. TrueHempScience.com, your one-stop shop for all things CBD. All right, let's get into our star of the day. Today is an interesting day. Some days, man, it is, I'm searching through the rubble to find somebody. Other days, it's like an embarrassment of riches. Today's one of those days. I could have gone with John Madden. I'll go with John Madden next week. I think today's also Rachel Corrie's birthday. And I think I've done Rachel Corrie before. And I'm not even sure if I've done Linda Goodman. But Linda Goodman is obviously in the astrological wheelhouse. So we're going to talk about her. And Linda Goodman was on the list of the 10 most influential astrologers. To date, her books on astrology have sold north of 60 million copies. I repeat, 60 million copies. Whenever anybody asks me, Robert, what book should I get to read about astrology? I say, easy. You get Linda Goodman's Sun Signs and Linda Goodman's Love Signs. Why? Because in Sun Signs, you will get the most complete breakdown of every astrological sign. She goes into great detail about each and every sign. In love signs, you will get a breakdown of the astrology of relationships. And they're great, great primers. There's a reason why she sold so many books. Linda Goodman might be single-handedly responsible for the astrological revolution in this country. And it's shocking, absolutely shocking, to think that if she were still alive today, she'd be 100 years old. She was born in 1925. So by the time the mid-60s rolled around, I remember my parents, or maybe my grandparents, somebody in my family, there was a copy of Sun Signs laying around. I don't think it was my parents, it might have been my grandparents. Probably my aunt or my uncle. And that would have been maybe 67, 68, somewhere around there. Linda Goodman was 43 years old. So she's really starting to have professional success in her early 40s. So for a lot of you people out there that are, just starting to turn the corner in your 40s, Linda Goodman is an example of what you can accomplish as you gracefully approach middle age. Now, what's interesting about her chart is, let's go to her fifth house. So the fifth house represents hobbies, pastimes, passions, and love, right? In my astrological course, which, by the way, you can purchase, the link is on my YouTube page. It's quite affordable. In my astrological course, I talk about the fifth house and the importance of the fifth house. It's a house that in many ways kind of gets looked over. Oh, it's a little superficial. It's about board games and, it's about love. And sometimes the love is, kind of infatuation love. It's about children. And not everybody's into children. It's one of those houses that I think is critical in my evolution of astrology, the evolution itself through astrology, especially in the times that we've lived in and are currently in. The fifth house is critical. You have to fall in love with something. And it's usually something you take up when you're a youth, which is the fifth house. It's a pastime. It's a hobby. It's something you like to do. And then you move it on over to the sixth house, and what happens? You get better at it, right? You get instruction. You find a mentor. So the fifth house is critical. And it shows you, your fifth house shows you what you love. It also shows your style of loving. So Linda Goodman has the true node in Leo. So she's supposed to go to that fifth house. She's supposed to explore it. It's the true nodes in Leo. South node is in Aquarius. If we're playing like the past life game, she's bringing the knowledge of astrology, which is ruled by Aquarius, into this lifetime. And she's supposed to do something with it. Neptune is creative. Neptune also has a spiritual component. And if you follow Linda Goodman's work, she eventually does this book called Goobers, Gooberz, which I've never read, but I know a little bit about. And it's a very far out, spiritual, new agey, allegorical story, which would be the culmination of Neptune. Now, whether you like it or not, that's a whole other thing. But she found something that she loved, and that love was astrology. And she's an Aries rising, and she's got Chiron, the sun, and Venus all over here. And I guarantee you, when Linda Goodman decided that she wanted to be an astrologer and to go into this world, it was a risk for her. She was taking a risk, whether it's with her parents, her community, her friends, whatever, right? It's the nature of Chiron. And she's a trailblazer. And she was a trailblazer. She really, again, made astrology a 20th century phenomenon. more in a popular way, right? In a very popular way. So she also has Mars in Gemini in the second house. She made her money what? Writing. Right? The second house is how you make your money. And here it's in Gemini. And she was very prolific. She wrote her books, I don't know, maybe has a half a dozen books, but they're thick. They're thick books. So she was always kind of going through ideas, right? She had no shortage of ideas. I'll tell you that right now. And I think she sensed an opportunity. Now, again, I don't know the complete story of Linda Goodman's life, but with Jupiter and Capricorn in the 10th house, I would think that there were other career options available for her. And she chose this one. She chose to go with the hobby. And as a result of which, she was in a conflict or dynamic struggle with what potentially could have been there for any other kind of occupation. But at the end of the day, she became the top dog in astrology. She got to the Mount Everest. Now, she may not have understood it in that regard, but this is how I see it. She also has Pluto down here in the third house. And her Pluto is interesting, right? Trine Saturn, it squares her Venus, and it squares her Sun. And I would say that maybe with these, if you look around, Isabel Hickey, kind of old school astrologer, and then you had Jean Dixon. But for the most part, when you look at astrology, like the big names in astrology they're males. They're quite esoteric. Mark Edmund Jones, Dane Rudhyar, and then later on you get people like Alan Leo and Robert Hand. They're not mainstream people, but they are males, and they're big brains. They're big thinkers. And I think Linda Goodman took them on in some ways, whether it was conscious or semi-conscious. She took them on. And this is not a person who would give up. She would not give up. When you get into these squares with, the Sun and Venus, I don't think relationships were easy for Linda Goodman, by the way. Saturn, Moon, Scorpio, 7th house. Whoever she was in a relationship with had to deal with her primary love, and that was astrology. All right, there you go. Your True Hemp Science star of the day, Miss Linda Goodman. If you haven't gotten sun signs, you want to learn more about astrology, go get it. And with that, we have reached the end of the show. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. Don't forget to hit like, bell, subscribe. You know the drill. If you want to buy me a cup of coffee, you can do that here. There's a link there. For those of you who have, thank you so much. I appreciate your coffee attention. And come join us over in 15 minutes. If you are interested in having me swing by your locale in the south, southeast, leave me a message. And I'll put something up on the locals today and kind of maybe break down a timeline. All right. Thanks, everybody. Treat each other well. Take care of yourselves. God bless you. Love you all. Bye for now.